Welcome to another episode of CP4SA, your one-stop place for all things career. As has been the trend recently, I'm trying to get a bit more entrepreneurship involved as well, just to expose, as much to South Africa's, what I would say, talent. And today is not different. I've got Anele with me. Anele, Anza, I'm not even sure what name to go with now.
Hey man, sure. I think I've got a lot of names that I go by, but Anele is fine for, I think most purposes. Yeah.
No, awesome, man. I think first and foremost, just really thank you for taking the time out to join me here. I think I'm quite excited because I think as much as people who are watching are going to get to know you, I'll also get to know you a little bit more. But I think first and foremost, who is Anele? Who is Anza?
Sure. I think it makes two of us in terms of the excitement. I have to thank you for reaching out.
Sure.
It's a great opportunity to be on this platform, and when you informed me about the work that you guys are doing, I was truly inspired. Because I think that the idea of having a repository of information directly from professionals, directly from entrepreneurs that young people can access, is a wonderful tool for people to be able to develop themselves on a personal level as well as professionally. So definitely thrilled to be on this show.
Thanks.
In terms of who Anele is, as you've said, that's my name, short and sweet. My surname is Ndziweni, and I am an entrepreneur and CEO and founder of Regal Consult, which is a marketing consultancy specializing in branding, communications, and advertising. Essentially what I could say sets us apart as a marketing business, because obviously there's different types of marketing companies. You get marketing agencies, you get creative agencies, you get PR agencies, etc. And so what sets us apart in the marketing space is that we've got a passion for business, a passion for the business development process. And that essentially encompasses all the different functions of business, not just focusing on marketing. And that's kind of our outlook in terms of how we approach the marketing that we do. More than that, we also have a deep interest in the deep understanding of the much broader subject of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial development, which I think puts us in a position to be able to add a lot more value for our customers when we assist them with marketing strategy.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. Really interesting. I think earlier on when you spoke, you mentioned that you took the leap of faith during COVID. During the last almost 3 years. Do you want to tell me what your thinking process was and how you got to the place where you said, you know what, this is now the time?
Yeah, sure. I think COVID was definitely an interesting time for most of us. Everything kind of changed in terms of the way that we live our lives, in terms of the way that we do our work, to be honest. And for me, what it really started to expose, moving away from the traditional kind of 9-to-5 setup where you're sitting in the office every day in order to get your work done. So I think what I noticed was that my day was a lot more open working from home, because it cancels out the time that you spent in traffic and all these other different kind of variables that are there when you go into the office to do your work. And during that period, I was able to then pick up on conducive habits like reading during the week, which you often can't get to do when you're under a normal working kind of system. And so for me, that created the new dynamic that I could manage my time a lot better on my own, and that was something that I was not aware of before. And so I could get work done in about 3 or 4 hours and be able to do other things and move things around and explore the flexibility of the workday through that. And for me, that allowed me to gain the confidence that I could be able to manage my own time as an entrepreneur, which then prepared me for the step that I was going to take in terms of the leap into entrepreneurship. So I would say that that's how the pandemic kind of, if I can say, propelled that process or expedited the process of me taking that leap of faith into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and I suppose if you listen to conversations South Africa wide, right, entrepreneurship is normally touted as the solution to the huge unemployment that we have as a country. What are your thoughts on that, based on your personal journey now?
Sure. Yeah, I think the unemployment crisis that we're facing in South Africa is something that is on a lot of young people's minds in terms of trying to come up with solutions for that. And, I think the one thing that I can say is that as entrepreneurs, our conditioning is around finding solutions for various kind of problems, and that's essentially the definition of being an entrepreneur, somebody who pulls together resources or takes on risk in order to come up with solutions that can then assist people and help people out. And so when it comes to the conversation of unemployment, I think there's a number of variables that we can look at here. Historically, this is something that has always set with government, the responsibility of being able to create employment for the citizens of our country. And we are also aware that small business plays a huge role in terms of being able to play its part as well in creating jobs for small business. But for me, it's always seemed that these things have been done kind of in isolation, in that government creates jobs in the way that it traditionally has through its through the various state departments, and small businesses employ who they can. But what I would propose as a solution into the problem, or something that we could look at as a possible solution, is merging those two components in such a way that we're collaborating to solve the problem instead of working in these two different kind of isolated fronts.
Yeah.
We believe as entrepreneurs, because this is our daily work, that we could be able to assist in terms of coming up with that roadmap that would take us from where we are. So if the issue or the challenge for government is economic development, so that we can create more opportunities for jobs to be available for our people, then that's the challenge that we have. And by consulting these entrepreneurs or consulting small business and working hand in hand with them, we can formulate a strategy together that can give us the roadmap that will take us from where we are to where we ideally want to be.
Yeah.
And I think if I can actually expand a little bit more or give an example in terms of exactly what I mean by that. In South Africa, our people are known for enjoying their entertainment, for instance. And I believe that there's an opportunity there that could allow us to be able to use that not as something that is negative, but as something that can be positive for our economy. The idea here is that by government sitting down with us on a level footing and not engaging us as potential beneficiaries, because at this point we're not even looking for funding as entrepreneurs. We're saying, can we sit down and have a discourse with government to say, how do we solve this problem? We've got a country of people that enjoy their entertainment, and for a long time it's been seen as something that is kind of negative. But I think that I disagree in terms of that thought. I think that the reason why South Africans love their entertainment is because our entertainment is of a very high level of quality, and the rest of the world has now begun to actually catch on to this. The reason why South Africans can't stay out of our areas or places of entertainment is because our music is at the highest level. Our dancing is at the highest level of entertainment. Our personalities are at the highest level. And so if the world is now starting to show an interest towards all of that, why can't we take these things and package them and export them and monetize them in the way that other countries package, export and monetize their various resources? Because essentially our people are our treasure, and I think that entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs can play a huge role in terms of helping government to realize that and package these goods and export them to the benefit of our economy.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the trick, right? It's all about, you almost need to do self-introspection, find out what are my skills, what do I have, what am I good at, and that's essentially how you build what can I do that could bring money. And I think what you're saying is basically a country should be run the same way when you're thinking, how do we get out from this mess? What do we have? And as you rightly say, entertainment is quite high, so maybe South Africa could be like an Ibiza, where it's party central, because we always talk about exporting our music, like, people are very excited that amapiano is everywhere, but maybe there's potential to bring people in to enjoy that culture and not necessarily send our DJs out.
Absolutely, Tabang. I couldn't agree with you more there, because it's one thing sending our entertainers or our DJs to go out and play in all these places. But if you think about it, for somebody in the UK who wants to see an amapiano DJ or an amapiano show, they would pay their 250 or their 800 rand for, I'm speaking in rands, you can do the math in terms of what that is in pounds, but they would pay that 800 rand to get to go and see that show, and the rest of those earnings or the income that would come from producing that show then goes to the people that have produced that particular event, and it goes into the tourism industry within that country. And so our guys only come back with the portion that they would that would be due to them for playing a set for an hour. Whereas when we bring that show here, that 800 rand that the one individual will be paying for a ticket turns into a much larger amount for somebody to come into the country and be able to explore the country and be able to kind of feed that into the infrastructure within our country and feed that into our promoters. And in that way, we're getting a lot more for the same product or the same service without kind of lowballing ourselves. And so I think there's a massive opportunity there as well.
So I think where maybe there's difficulty for artists, it's in the same place that there's difficulty for professionals. So as a young professional, you think about how much work is required for South Africa to truly value, the skill I have or the education I have, versus countries that are already developed. And then you have to think about, how do I make the sacrifice? So when you have an accountant or an engineer saying, I want to go to Australia, I want to go to the UK because they pay well, it's hard to then say, but if you kept that skill here, we could potentially raise South Africa up. And I say that because we have a lot more that needs to be fixed than just our personal lives. I think we don't live in isolation. You've got a whole government, you've got politics, but I think importantly for now, I want you to do the same introspection that based on this conversation we've just done for South Africa, but on yourself. So when it came to you, and you looked at the skills that you had, you looked at the resources, the network, how did you take all of that, bring it together and decide this is the line of business or the line of entrepreneurship I think I'd excel at?
Wow, that's I think that's a great question, and there's so much into it. There's it's not a straight answer that you would get, but I think there is something that I can say that actually speaks to that. So when it comes to the subject of entrepreneurship and building businesses, there's something called the entrepreneurial myth, or an e-myth, for short, some people call it. And basically this is the kind of widespread perception that in order to be successful, or in order to build a successful business, all that's required is for somebody to have a skill or to be able to produce a particular product,
Yeah.
and then sell that product to as many people as possible, and then that's going to turn them into a global business.
Yeah.
Of which that is a misconception, because you'll find that what you find is that most successful businesses that have endured for several years, decades, centuries, or whatever it may be, those businesses were not started in that way. They actually started in almost a reverse kind of process. They started by somebody who has an entrepreneurial ambition or an entrepreneurial mind, right? And what that person then does is to identify a problem that exists or an opportunity that exists in the market. And then they're going to sort of reverse engineer from that problem, work backwards, go into the market to see if there is a market that requires a particular fix or a particular solution, and then from there on do some research and come up with a product or a service that would then be able to service that market, or that would then be able to satisfy that need or solve that particular problem. So it's almost like working the process backwards before you then identify what type of skill would then be required. And so with that mentality, it's not to say that somebody who has a particular skill or talent that they want to use to build a business cannot become successful, but they need to understand that there's a process in order to do that. And how the process goes is that within any successful business, there's three key roles that are crucial for the development and the sustainability of that business. And those three roles are the role of the technician, who is essentially the person that has the skill to build the product or to deliver the specific service.
Yeah.
And that's one role on its own. And then from there on, there's the role of the manager in a business, whose responsibility is to ensure that each of the conditions that are required for business to take place every day are in place on time. If a store needs to open by 8 o'clock, that the store is open, that there's lights and there's electricity and everything that is required for business to take place. And that is the role of the manager. And then moreover, there's the role of the entrepreneur, who is responsible for seeking out opportunities for growth for the business. So these opportunities may be in finding new suppliers or cheaper or better suppliers for that business, seeking out new markets that the business can go into, finding clients, etc., as well as seeking out investment opportunities which speak to them financing that business so that it can be able to grow. So it's about understanding each of these roles in your business and knowing that you need to build your competency across each of these areas in order to build a successful business. So for somebody out there who's thinking about walking the entrepreneurial route or the entrepreneurial path, these are the considerations that you then have to say, do I have the right competencies at a technical level to be able to build this business? And you must remember the rule of thumb is that you need about 10,000 hours, right? In order to truly master something. So that time needs to be put in there from a technical perspective. But at a management level, there's also a lot that needs to be put in, because these are where all your different functions of business sit. So you've got your marketing management, you've got your financial management, you've got your HR management, you've got legal, etc., etc. You've got operations. And each of these areas need competencies built in order to have these departments function and uphold this business during its growth process. So it's about understanding each of these principles at an entrepreneur level. You've got to do the reading, you've got to build the networks, etc., etc. And so this is the work as consultants that we're involved in, assisting businesses to understand each of these areas and what needs to be done in order to develop these departments, develop these competencies, and develop these roles so that your business has got a fighting chance.
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be said, but I'll obviously link your connectors, whether it be your email, your site, just so if somebody's listening to this and thinks that's exactly what I need for my business, then they'll know where to find you. But I like that you brought it all back together, you know, the technician, the manager, the entrepreneur, because in reality, for the South African that wants to take this journey, they have to do all three most of the time, because you're sitting there in your home and you're thinking, this is the idea that I want to solve, but you need to know how to do the work. You need to know how to manage everything that's coming in, and at the same time, you've got to think about what opportunities, you know, once you've handled. Yeah, so yeah, I think kudos for bringing it together. I think entrepreneurship, South Africa, if a person is sitting at home and is thinking, you know, how do I build my own? Because I think if I can think back to when I used to look at, I looked at Drip, I looked at Batu when they first came out, and I was thinking these are great examples of South African success, right? But Snap,
Absolutely.
I like sneakers, but they've already done it now. And then I sort of also moved away from that idea of maybe shoes can be done, and you jump on to other things. But I've seen how since that time, there's been so many other sneakers who've been, I won't say equally as successful, but they've also gotten their own piece of, you know, the pie. So what do you think is the balance between being the first to do something or just joining an existing array of entrepreneurs that are doing something similar, but at the same time being able to carve out your own path? And I know my questions might be a little bit challenging. I think it's important to mention that, you know, we don't prep for these conversations. I think it comes naturally as we speak. So I think take your time, but what do you think? How does one set themselves apart while not being afraid to try something just because somebody else has done it before?
Yeah, that's. I think the challenging questions are the most stimulating.
Yeah.
To be honest, so I think the first thing I can say is that, and it's an old adage that there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
So you know, fighting to be the first to do anything is, I think that's a tall order.
Yeah.
On this planet, you know, unless you're going to, you know, invent a new sun, essentially. But what I can say is that that's a challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs face, where they feel like, what is my place in the market? And the key word there is precisely that. It's the word market, right? It's about market share. So in any environment, there are going to be existing customers, there are going to be existing service providers, you know, there's going to be suppliers, endless options for clients. So you need to not only focus on the fact that that's the case, that these things already exist, but focus on the idea that it's all a big pie, right? And all you need to do is find a small portion for yourself from that pie that you can cut out and service, and over time look to grow so that you can secure a much bigger piece and a much bigger piece. And that's essentially the game. It's about market share. But to drill down on that, marketing and market shares and market segmentation boils down to the concept of niching, and it's something that we've all heard before. So, you know, you made an example about sneakers, right? That there's already this brand, there's already that brand that exists, etc., etc. But when you look at these brands, who do they actually service, right? So let's take any one of the ones that you mentioned. Who did you mention?
Batu, Drip.
Yeah, so let's say we take Drip, right? Who do they specifically service in the market, right? If you think about it, we all wear shoes, right? We all wear sneakers, but we don't all wear sneakers for the same reasons, or we don't all buy certain sneakers for the same reasons, right? So somebody else might buy sneakers because they just want something comfortable that they can do their errands around in. Somebody else might buy sneakers because they are a gym fanatic, or they enjoy their workouts and they're looking for something that's going to be comfortable, something that's going to enhance their performance during their workouts. So these are all different markets within the same sneaker bracket. So when you look at the guys that are already existing, who are they servicing in those markets? Are they servicing guys that are buying for comfort and lounging? Are they servicing guys that are buying for performance and training? And that's where your opportunities begin to lie. That's where you start to identify the gaps that exist in the market. Because now you can say, okay, Drip exists, and Drip produces sneakers for the guy Ekasi, or maybe the young working professional, for instance. So those two markets are already taken. But where else is there a gap? There are people that buy sneakers for pure luxury. You know, they enjoy luxury brands, they enjoy the status that comes with that. Is there a market there? Is Drip servicing that market? So that's where maybe your opportunity may lie, to say, I'm going to create my own sneaker brand, but I'm only going to speak to the guys that buy sneakers for luxury, for status, and that kind of thing. And so that's where the options are for somebody who's trying to get into any line of business. You need to find a place where you can kind of fit yourself in.
Yeah, perfect. I think, I'm learning as well, listening. So I think as we wind down, I'm going to ask you a few quick round questions. And what that means is, respond in a word or a sentence, just to, I guess, encompass some of the other stuff that I'd like to know personally.
Sure.
So for one, your company, do you see it going global?
Certainly.
Okay. And I'm just going to move on. I hope that's clear.
Definitely, yeah.
You mentioned reading a lot of books during the pandemic. Can you name a few that you think people could benefit from?
Sure. Sure, there's so many books that come to mind. But one book that was really valuable for me is a book called The 10% Entrepreneur.
Okay.
Another great book for entrepreneurs, especially who are just starting out, is a book called Lose the Business Plan by Alon Reyes. And then the third book is a book called The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Yeah, that book gave me a lot of the insight and some of the wisdom that I needed to build the capacity to stay the course, to be resilient in this process. And it's a book that I often go back to whenever I'm feeling a little bit stuck.
Okay. Toughest lesson you've learned as an entrepreneur?
That failure is just not the end.
Yeah.
I think that's been the one lesson that I've learned, especially over the last year. There's been times when I've hit lows that I could have never imagined myself. And yeah, it feels like the world is ending in that moment, and suddenly you're kind of thinking about going and scrambling in the job market again. And it can get quite difficult. So I think managing failure and understanding that failure is just not the end of the journey, and that it's just a part of the process. You've got to take the time to feel it if you need it. Sometimes it rocks you to your knees, and you do need to kind of take a moment just to gather yourself. But what's important is to not let that last too long, and find a way to get back on the saddle.
Awesome. Yeah, I think in those questions I've pretty much gotten you to give some advice. Because my last question would have been, if you had an opportunity now to give advice to a budding entrepreneur, somebody working a 9-to-5, thinking I might want to, get into entrepreneurship. So I wanted to just get those points out of you. But I think I'll give you another opportunity now, based on everything that we've discussed. Is there any question that you feel maybe I didn't ask and you really want to get this on record as well?
No, I think we've covered just about everything. There isn't anything else on my side. I think if there's any advice that I can kind of give that maybe we have not touched on today, is to say that, the best way to learn is by doing. And we've heard so many of these things before, that done is better than perfect. So I think we spend a lot of time sometimes as entrepreneurs doubting ourselves or questioning certain things, and that's okay. But what's more important than that is to try things, is to do things. Everything that comes to mind, everything for you that looks like it could work or could be impactful for you or your business, you've got to try it, so that you know that if it doesn't work, then that's that doesn't work, and then you go on to the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. And I think the entire exercise is about just ticking all of those boxes in terms of what doesn't work, flipping all the rocks, so that next time you know that if I need to do this, I don't have to go down this path, I don't have to go down that path, because I've been there and I've failed, and this is the way.
Yeah, Anza, it's been a pleasure chatting to you, man. I'm really hoping people are inspired by the message you shared.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you so much for this opportunity once again.
Awesome.